Hey, what's going on, everybody? Troy Rawlings here. Welcome to another exciting episode of Meet the. And today we have the beautiful, sexy, vivacious. I do this stuff also with people that turn red easy. Uh, vivacious, fit mom, uh, fitness. I guess I would say body image guru. That's how I originally met her years ago, and now published author and tell-all person around town. No, Canadian. Are you Canadian born?
Yes,
Canadian born.
absolutely. Born and
Marci Warhaft. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Am I saying Warhaft right? Is Warhaft or
You
Warhaft?
are. Very few people say it right, and you said it right. Yeah.
Okay, because I tell my daughter, it's the, for those I don't try to date these interviews and stuff, but for those that don't know, we're in a dispensation of time like no other. 2020 pandemic worldwide, coronavirus uprising in the United States and around the world, and all this stuff going on.
Yep.
And I have an opportunity when I get, these are some of the fun interviews. All my interviews have been pretty fun. You find something. I'm a comedian. I find something fun and funny and uplifting. But you are by nature an uplifting person. But let's start it from the beginning. I'm a Tarantino a little bit around this interview, so let's start from the beginning with you.
Okay.
Where are you originally from?
I'm from Montreal, Quebec, actually.
Quebec.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Canadian girl. How was your upbringing? How mom, dad at home? What was the scenario? What was the upbringing?
Well, you know what? I remember my childhood being really good, really fun for the beginning. So I always say I peaked when I was 8. Like I remember being super happy when I was 8. Then it got a little tricky. But so it was my parents, my brother, older brother and sister. I was the youngest of 3. And so it was kind of an upper middle class, kind of normal upbringing until I was 10. When I was 10, my parents split, and I was the first kid in my school whose parents got divorced. Because I remember at one point, years later, I met a friend, and she said we were in school together, and she was a year older, and she said she remembers going home and saying to her mother, "What's divorce?" Because this girl in my school,
Wow.
didn't know how to deal with it. Because I remember it was Father's Day, and we were told to write something for our fathers. And my father, when he left, when I was 10, he left. So he wasn't in the picture for most of my life. And I remember going to the bathroom and crying because I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Because I don't have a father to do anything for. And so I remember doing something for my mom instead because she was both my parents. But so things got difficult because it was a difficult divorce. But my brother and sister and mom and I were really close. So things were pretty good until life started sucker punching me when I was about 17. So I'd say from, yeah, until I was 17, things were pretty good.
Now, for those that don't know what sucker punch means, it means hit out of nowhere. It's like you're talking trash or somebody comes from behind and hit you. And so sucker punch. All right. Well, I want to touch on this real quick. Were your parents fighting to the point where you knew they were going to separate? Well, you had no idea what separation was, I guess. No one.
Honestly, it's funny because it was difficult, divorce, but it's not one of the things in my life that I think had a hugely negative impact on me because my mother was so spectacular. I was very, very lucky to have such a spectacular, strong, loving parent that once my father left, he wasn't that involved. So once he left, I felt the tension was gone. Yes, it was challenging because when he left, he didn't pay a dime of support. We lost our cars. We cut off our phone. Like it was tough. And at 10 years old, I remember also a memory I have. I remember walking into the laundry room when my mother was doing laundry. And I remember saying to her, "What's so bad about me that even my father doesn't want to know me?" And she explained that it wasn't a problem with me. It was a problem with him. And so that was difficult, but I honestly felt it was a positive thing in the end because he left and the rest of us did get closer. And there was so much love in our house. We were the house that our friends wanted to come to, because my mother was that person who.
So you're going to make somebody a sandwich.
Well, my mother didn't try to be the cool mom. She was the one that was the loving mom. If my friends couldn't talk to their parents about something, they could talk to my mom. There was never any judgment. I remember from the youngest age, I remember her saying to me that you are neither superior nor inferior to anybody else based on anything. And that stuck with me forever. And that's how she raised us. And so my father, and he was in my life on and off, but there was never a connection there. So the divorce was challenging, but it didn't really negatively impact me, because the rest of us, like I was very, very close with my older brother, for example. So he took over the role that my father left.
So 17 comes in, and out the blue.
What happens? So, as I was saying, my brother was my everything. I looked at him with stars in my eyes. He was just the most handsome, funny, loving. I describe him as the invisible armor that I wore around me every day when I went out in the world. So he knew when to stand behind me to encourage me to defend myself, and when to stand in front of me to defend me when I needed help. And when I was 17, he got sick, and he was always very athletic, and we didn't really know what was wrong. And the doctors said he had mono and then hepatitis, and it took a little while for them to realize he was born with a hereditary liver disease. It just wasn't showing up the way it usually would. So it took a while, and I think my mother was trying to protect me by not telling me how serious it was. And so he'd had 2 liver transplants, actually. So he was 21. But I was writing an English exam in high school, my last year of high school, when my vice principal walked in and came over to my desk and took my papers and said, "Come with me." And we walked to the office, and I noticed he just wasn't looking at me or saying anything. And I walked in and saw my uncle, and I knew, I just knew. And I just said, "Is he?" And he just shook his head. And I knew my brother had died. And I was not prepared. Because, again, here was this, he was a superhero to me. And 21 years old, it never crossed my mind that he wouldn't be okay. And that day, my whole life changed. My entire life changed, because at that moment, 2 things. One, I realized that if this young, strong, amazing person can die, anything can happen. So usually teenagers feel like we're, anything. Yeah. And I realized then, oh my God, anything can happen. So I felt very vulnerable. I've never felt safe, I don't think, since that. The moment before I heard that he died was the last time I ever felt safe, I think. Completely safe. The other thing that happened was I felt that he was such a good person that it should have been me instead of him. And for years, I'm talking years, the mantra that went through my head was, it should have been me. And so I just felt that the world needed him more than it needed me. And I thought that if I was going to be here instead of him, almost like taking his spot, I couldn't just be regular. I couldn't be average. I had to earn it. I had to be spectacular. But I didn't feel spectacular. I didn't feel like I was particularly smart or funny or interesting or anything. And so then that's when I always say my brother's death gave birth to my eating disorder, because that was the first thing that happened. Was I thought, well, if I can't be smart enough and interesting enough, I should be pretty enough. And at 17 years old, with all of society's warped sense of beauty, I thought I had to be skinny. And so that's when I sort of hit the day he died, I stopped eating pretty much. And it just that set me off. And luckily I've had strong recovery, but it was that's kind of a thread that went through my life for years, was just never feeling like I was good enough. And I put a lot of pressure on myself. And that's probably one of the first sucker punches that life gave me. And it was a big one. It was a big one.
Well, also, I mean, the divorce and then leaning because of the love of the divorce, you still have people there, but was it just you and your brother?
And so I have an older sister it was me. My brother was 5 years older. My sister was 7 years older. But my sister and I have just gotten close recently because
Right.
it's a big age. Yeah, first of all, we were both very close to our brother.
Mm-hmm.
But also 7 years apart, we're just realizing now how you can go through similar life experiences. But I'm 10, she's 17. It's completely different.
Yeah.
And I also realized that in the same way that my mother tried to protect me from things by not giving me all the information and me feeling kind of blindsided and not prepared, as the oldest, my sister everything was put on her shoulders. So she had the weight of the world. So we both were dealing with challenges, but very differently. And it was very difficult for us to connect until recently when I wrote the book and we started talking and we realized so much. And I say all the time, she's the only person in the world that's had my mother as a mother and my brother as a brother. That's it. She's the only person aside from me that really knows what it's like to have been Billy's sister and Shirley's daughter. And that's powerful, and we really appreciate that.
Yes, but you never know what it's going to be that brings you together. My brother and I are 10 years apart. And as we've gotten older, it was that sense of protection before he went off to the army, and I was 8 and he was 18. And then you got that span of time. So amazingly enough, I totally understand what happens when your essential covering is out of the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And on 2 occasions for you. So 17, you graduate high school, I take it. And so this was your senior year at high school.
It was my last year. So in Montreal, you go to high school goes to grade 11. So this was the last, yeah. So it was my last, it was my final English exam of high school that he passed away.
So what were your plans beforehand? Before your brother passed, what were your plans?
I had auditioned. Interestingly, I had auditioned for a big theater school in Montreal. So I wanted to be an actress, and so before he got sick, or before he'd gotten very sick, he was an actor in high school, and he had helped me prepare my audition. So he had given me a monologue from a play he was in and helped me audition. And so I auditioned, and then I got home from the hospital the day he died, and the phone rang, and it was the theater school telling me I had gotten in to the program. And I remember looking up and going, "Thank you, Billy." It was too crazy that yeah.
So you go into a theater program. You went in. Did you go in?
I did. I didn't stay long. I went in. You know what? Again, I'm 17 years old. I got away actually that summer. So he died the end of May. And that summer, he had worked as a counselor at his summer camp the summer before. We were both supposed to work together the next summer. I was teaching dance, and I wasn't sure if I should go, and I went, and it was a great summer. As I said, I started to really judge myself and not feel like I was enough after he died, and I was really focusing on my weight and how I looked. And I went to camp, and I was teaching dance, and I felt good about myself. I met good people, was feeling better. And then I got home, and I went to the doctor, my family doctor. And I realize now, looking back, that he had some issues. I've never been overweight. My family isn't overweight. I'm active. I was teaching dance all summer. And I went to the doctor, who had been my brother's doctor, knew I had just lost my brother a few months earlier. And I was proud of myself that at that age, I was aware enough that when my doctor said, this part of a checkup, he said, "Go on the scale, we'll weigh you." I said to him, "You know what? Right after Billy died, I saw myself getting obsessed with the scale. Don't tell me how much I weigh, because I feel like if I hear a number, whatever it is, it'll mess me up." And again, I was always active, always fit. But when you have a warped sense of yourself, any number is going to be not okay. And I told him that. But I got on the scale, and he said, medically speaking, I was not overweight, but society was thin. And if I wanted to fit into society, I needed to lose 10 pounds. And then he continued to berate me. He was pointing at my stomach saying, "What is that? If I were you, I wouldn't wear a bathing suit in public." Yeah, it was and I've
The
never heard
doctor?
the doctor. I'd never heard that in my life. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to let this mess me. He wanted me to come in every week and write down everything that I was eating and then present it to him so he could kind of, and he yelled at me for stuff that I was, and again, I was very active, but I
Now,
learned.
now, now, just make sure somebody's listening to this. You did say at the beginning of this that you found out later that he had mental issues.
No, I'm saying he probably had some.
Not just mental issues. He
had,
probably had somebody locked up in the basement somewhere.
but he had some. He was known for. He wasn't great at but I think he was trying to mold me into what he wanted what he thought was perfection. Because I had other friends.
Basement.
Maybe, yeah, seriously. But so I would go in there were a few weeks I would go in and I would tell him what I ate and he would yell at me if it wasn't appropriate. But I remember, you have to realize too, because my brother's disease was hereditary, there was a 50-50 chance that I would have, a 50% chance I would be a carrier, 25% chance I would have it. I don't have it, but they tested it was a liver disease. They tested my liver. It was off. I had to be tested constantly for the first year. So I was leaving his office to go to get tested for this. So it was pretty traumatic. And I remember as I left, I thought, like I just said, I'm not going to let this mess me up. We got to the hospitals with my mom, and we'd always go for like a quick breakfast cafeteria. And I remember ordering toast, no butter, and thinking, I can't. And he wanted me to lose 10 pounds, and I lost 10, and then I lost another 10, and then I lost another 10. And I remember him saying to me at one point, go on the scale. You're looking really skinny. And he said, okay, you can stop now. And I remember thinking, no way, screw you. I'm not it was like a power thing. And it just kind of got worse from there. So, back to theater school. So I was in theater school at the time, but I'm struggling with, it was a great program. I loved the people, but here I used to be so kind of out there and confident with who I am. And here I'm feeling like I'm being berated by my doctor. My brother's gone. My security is gone. It was really tough for me. And I was there for about a year and a half. And I had this feeling of, I don't know how long I have. Billy was healthy and then he's gone. And so I needed to start living my life. And I didn't have the confidence to continue, even though it was my dream to be a performer. I didn't have that anymore. I kind of lost that spark. And so I left the program.
So 17, let's jump in. So you left the program. What did you start doing? Did you start working? Did you start?
So it was tough at first. I really was. It's funny because I have people now who will say to me, how you've got so much energy all the time and you're so positive all the time. And it's one of the reasons I wrote my book is because I think it's important to show where the light comes from. It comes from living when it wasn't living in the dark and coming out of it. Right. I remember leaving school and I remember, oh God, I would stay up all night so that I could be tired enough to sleep through the day. So I wouldn't have to face the day. At the point I wasn't eating at all. So I would also want to sleep as much as I could during the day to avoid going to the kitchen for anything. I was trying to be invisible. I think I was just trying to shrink down sort of physically, but also just in every way so I could just disappear. And then I did get into a dance program, but I didn't stay with that because I didn't have the confidence. And it was a while where it's almost like a blur. It was just kind of trying to get through. There was one day when I remember I was lying in bed and it was just my mom and I. My sister had moved out. And I remember thinking my heart was going to stop. I was sure because I hadn't eaten enough. And I was sure my heart, that night, that was it for me. That was the night I was going to go. And I remember thinking, hey, my mom's in the next room. She just buried her son. How horrible would it be for her to have to bury her daughter too, because I was starving myself. And I thought I should go into the kitchen and get something to eat. But then I thought, but what if I'm not? Like, what if I'm actually okay and I get those calories for nothing? So I didn't. And I just listened to my heartbeat the whole night until it was morning. And I realized I had made it through the morning, and then I could sleep. It was kind of a wasted, but then something happened. I don't know. And I decided, okay, I need to start living. I also felt guilty again. Here I'm wasting my life when Billy couldn't be here. What am I doing? So I decided to move to Toronto. I felt that I needed to get out of Montreal. I felt it was just not, I needed to just start living my life kind of thing. And so I moved.
So in Canada, is Toronto like the big city?
I mean, Montreal's a big city too. Toronto's a big city, but it's kind of an easy move. It's about a 5-hour drive. It's kind of there are so many former Montrealers in Toronto. So it's a normal kind of transition.
Right.
So, but it was a big deal. Look, my mom was very protective, and I was 19 and moving by myself, and but she didn't want to smother me. She'd read about how when you lose a child, you can smother your other ones, and she didn't want that. So I think we kind of laughed about it years later that I think she kind of did the opposite. Like she was kind of like, sure, you can go and did some crazy things. But yeah, so she'd visit me all the time, but I went by myself.
Now, by this time you're 19. Your sister's 26. What is your sister's doing? Is she in college? Is she working? What is she doing at this time?
She was married. I think she was married at this point. She was working and she was very responsible. She was a rebel when she was younger, but then she became very responsible, and she was working, and she got married, and she was doing things the right way. Like me.
So let's fast forward a little bit. For those who don't know, your memoir is called The Good Stripper.
Oh.
Now, what's the subtitle? I like the subtitle.
Oh, the subtitle: A Soccer Mom's Memoir of Lies, Loss, and Lap Dances.
So okay.
Okay. So
and how many children do you have? For those who don't know.
I have 2. Yeah. I lost one. I was pregnant, but I have 2.
And 2 boys.
2 boys.
So who qualified this? For y'all that don't know, her oldest son said, "Okay, Mom."
They're so good. Yeah, they're so used to me not being traditional. They're great.
Mm.
Yeah.
So when did it get to the point where? Because in the midst, anytime I hear men or women, but especially women, I'm big on women and men having friends that are of the same sex. Reason being is because somebody that you can bounce stuff off of. Some best friend that you can say, if you're a woman, you need someone that can teach you something, or that relates. If it's a peer, they can say, "Hey, I'm going through it too." You're like, "Whew." It's a big exhale when you realize you're not the only one going through something. So did you have any friends, like best friends or female friends at the time, or were you the total loner?
Oh no! See, the thing is, I had some for sure. I had some best friends growing up. I have a very small circle of close friends. I'm lucky in a big community of other friends, but I have some friends that I've been friends with for a very long time. But it's funny because there's 2 things with that. So yes, I have some good friends and who were always supportive of me. But when you were saying friends who say, "Yeah, I've been through that," or can relate to that, I never had that, because the experiences that I went through, yes, people have parents who are divorced, but I didn't know anyone who had lost a sibling. One thing we didn't mention is that, in between my brother passing away, and then sort of me developing my body image stuff, I had a stepfather who was arrested for bank robbery. So no one could relate to that. Yeah, you have to that. So
and was this a small town too?
This is not. No, yeah. So
okay.
It's there were things. So my friends, I would have people saying to me that they would come to me when a friend of theirs was going through something traumatic, because chances are
it's not as bad as your stuff, right? But you need to talk to Marci.
But it was like, yeah, like they couldn't relate, but I've probably been through it. Not that I've had such a great, but I think the stuff that I've been through has been a little bit unique, and that's what. So that was a bit lonely in that. Yeah, it was hard. Nobody could go. oh, I've been through that, or this is what I did, because they were going, what is that? Like, oh my. So that's tough. So I had to kind of find my own way, and I didn't always make the right choices. So
No. So yeah, I mean, you're 19 at the time. You moved to Toronto at 19. Different city, new life. And did you at that point in time, because you're still so young, 17. Well, I guess in United States standards, you're 17, you go an extra year, you give a little bit more development. Where you're from, I take it you knew a lot of, or you knew women who by the time they were 18, 19, 20 had already been married, started their family. Anything
no.
like that? No? Okay. Because you said your sister was 26 and she was married already.
They'll probably go, what? No, not yet. But around there, I think, I don't know. But I also got married quite young. I got married at 24. So,
okay.
Yeah, nothing has been, I can't, I now I don't even plan, because nothing that I thought was, yeah, no. I didn't know what.
I guess my big thing is, when did you get to the point where there was something that was pulling you towards a passion? Because now you seem so, at this point, I don't know how old you are now. You still look like you're young.
Out of it.
How old?
50.
Oh, so 50. So, okay. So you're 50 years old now.
Yes.
But at some point, 30 years ago.
All right.
What guided you away from that? Because we hear people don't make it out of anorexia. We hear people don't make it away from depression. We hear people that don't make it away from the things that you've guided through. What kind of guided you to the next thing? Something pushed you to go to Toronto for something different once you got there.
But I didn't heal when I was there. I don't think I healed. That was the thing. So I still battled that part of me, the eating disorder part, until I was in my 30s. And then I was married with children when I went into recovery for that, because the life kept coming at me. I was still, that's not where it ended. It would have been brutal if the death of my brother was the worst thing. That still would have been, I still miss him. Anyone who knows me knows about my brother, because I miss him terribly. But that wasn't where it ended. It kept, that was the problem with me. And that's what led to the book, is that what I felt was the traumas kept coming, and they kept coming fast. So I didn't have time to catch my breath. I didn't have time to, okay, I'm going to deal with this and then move on. And then, okay, I'm going to deal with, it wasn't, it would hit me. And as I'm picking myself up, I'm hit again. And then as I'm picking myself up, I'm hit again. So there were a lot of times when I thought, that's it, I'm done. I'm not getting up from this. And then something would compel me to get up, and then I'd be hit again. And I'm like, okay, now I'm done. Like, now I'm done.
Now it's over.
This is it. But I think I had like 30 years of that. So it really wasn't until my 30s that I got control of the eating through a great program. But then it wasn't until, I'm saying, 4 years ago that I became this, which is me feeling free to be whoever, say whatever, live however I feel comfortable. And it's incredibly liberating. But that's only been in the last 4 years, maybe. It's taken me this long.
Well, it's life. I wish, I tell people all the time, I wish there was another way. I tell my 8-year-old, just like I tell a 61-year-old, I wish it was another way. Because all of us have different processes of learning. And when you've experienced some kind of trauma like that, everything we go through, like they say, post-traumatic stress syndrome. And when a lot of times they were using it in conjunction with people who had went to the military and experienced these horrendous things. But they were judging what the horrendous thing was for that person.
Right.
And we talk about it. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I know people that have, depending on where they're from and harder places, you have young people now who have seen their best friends die, seen people die on a regular basis. And what's the difference between that and the Vietnam person that was diagnosed? But what's the difference when all of a sudden you don't see them die, or a family member dies?
Right.
A family member leaves, instrumental. You're 10 years old, and you're like, Dad, can we go to he was like, what's going on? All that stress syndrome. So there is no textbook way, You
Yeah.
know, there is no special, everybody deals with things differently, spiritual faith, whatever. But there's nothing saying, hey, this is the answer that will help you feel better. Take this. And a lot of times we try to find the take this.
Yeah. Well, see, interesting, because that's what makes my story a little bit unique, is that when the traumas hit and they kept hitting. So it was, going to Toronto, and that was really great for me because I had to take responsibility for myself, and that was great. And then I met my ex-husband, and that was great at the time. But then it was, I got sick. No, first I got pregnant, and then I'd had 2 miscarriages, and then I got pregnant again. And then while I was pregnant with my oldest, my mom, so I used to say my brother was my invisible armor, my mother was my home to come home to all the time. She was just light and love. She was love personified. And she was so excited when I was pregnant. And this time I was by this time I'd moved to Vancouver, so another part of Canada. And I was on the phone with my mom 3 times a day, where she would call me with her cravings, with her pregnancy cravings, because it was our baby. And I was 4 months pregnant, but then my mom died. And so here I was, and she died of breast cancer, and I didn't see it coming because, again, she was protecting me and not telling me that it was back. And so I'm pregnant, and my mom, who's now, everything to me, I'm realizing I'm not going to have 4 minutes as a mom with my mom. Like, I don't, that's gone. And so, but I couldn't deal with her loss because I'm pregnant, and I had to focus on staying healthy.
Because you had already had.
I'd already lost 2, and then I almost lost my son. And I mean, it became crazy. And then I have this amazing 16-month-old, and then I get sick, and I had this weird reaction to an antibiotic, and I end up in the hospital for 2 months, kidney failure, respiratory failure. I've given a 25% chance of surviving. I get pneumonia. I get the superbug MRSA in the hospital. It's
And believe me, folks, we're not giving away the whole book.
Right. Gotten to the salacious stuff.
Right.
So it was, and then I come out of that, and now I'm only 29, just turning 30. And I think, okay, I'm never going to sweat the small stuff, like they always say, right? So my brother died, my mother died. I actually heard my father died after that. I almost died. I lost baby. I'm like, okay, I'm going to focus on just being happy and the important stuff. And
so where does this, that's the thing I'm wondering. Where does this strength come from? Where does that?
Okay, but it's not, because that's what I was
No. You don't think, you think you're just plowing through. But there are many people that don't plow through each part of those things. You're talking about a 10-year span, not even talking about from your father to this. You're talking about, you were 10, then 30. You're talking about a 20-year span of some things that were traumatic and trying to get your footing. So how do you continue to go by this time you do have your son and you're married?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think.
Now, does your husband at this time? Does your husband know about how much of this stuff of your past and everything does he know? Does he know it all?
He knows everything, and I was grateful that he met my mom. He'd never met my brother, but he met my mom. And but I think what had happened was, I got out of the hospital, and then we decided to move back to Toronto because. Well, we decided to move when I was pregnant because it's Vancouver and Toronto are very far, opposite sides of the country. And I didn't have much family, but he did. And we wanted our kids to know the family, and we moved back. I decided to get pregnant again because I knew I had another one in me. I knew I had a brother from my.
We decided.
Whatever.
It's always funny to me when I had guys say, "You're pregnant? How?" It's like,
okay, whatever. We decided.
Upside down. Oh.
So I had my younger son, and which was great. Like, the doctors were like, "What are you doing? Like, why put your body through the possibility of more trauma?" I lost my baby in 2000, and here I had delivered my next one in 2001. So I didn't give myself a lot of time, but I just knew I had this other one coming. So I had 2 pretty miracle babies, but I had him, and so this is where the big change. This is where the good stripper comes in, is that there was a lot. I had experienced a lot. I didn't have time. So my mom dying while I'm pregnant, and I almost lost my son. And then it was just, I couldn't. And something in my body went, you're done. Like, I can't anymore. Like, I couldn't. It was a physical change. It was an emotional change. But something said, Marci, you're done. And I couldn't handle anymore. Like you said, where does the strength come from? My body said I wasn't anymore. My body's like, or my brain said no more. And I didn't have the support that I needed. Let's just say I didn't have, my family was gone. My sister and I weren't very close. My ex-husband and I were not on the same page with certain things. And to protect myself, I subconsciously almost dissociated and became somebody else. And there were extenuating factors, which you'll have to read the book.
Gotta read the
book to find out. But extenuating circumstances that led me to leading a double life, where I found almost a fake sense of empowerment and strength in being this other person. And I remember actually, literally one day, and I remember this day looking at myself in the bathroom mirror and saying to my reflection, who are you? I did not recognize myself. I was that disconnected from who I knew. I would do things and go, I should be feeling scared now, but I'm not. I should be feeling sad now, but I'm not. Like, I knew. So I put myself in situations that were risky. I did things that I never would have done because I really wasn't myself anymore. I was almost looking at myself from a distance. I felt close with my kids. I felt connected to my kids. I felt extremely protective of my children, but not of myself. I was completely disconnected from my health wasn't a concern. My well-being wasn't a concern. I felt I served two purposes, which was to be the best mother I could be. Having lost my mom and having almost died, I felt like, I don't know how long I have. I've got to make sure every moment is a memory for them. I want them to just remember great things. So I was focused on that. But as a person, my self-worth was quite low. And so I felt like the only thing that I had to offer was my sexuality. And so I became this kind of mom that I was trying to be. And then the other part of me was just about, I felt the only thing I had to offer, the only thing that people cared about or wanted from me was my sexuality. And so that the other person that I kind of became was all that. I didn't go to drugs, never had a drug, never had a sip of alcohol during what I call my crazy time, nothing. I was all fueled by trauma and just this larger than life personality. So it really was this double life completely.
And I'm nodding, I'm smiling, I'm like, and I know it's some women and men sitting back somewhere right now. You may not realize it. You may realize it more now because, and we'll talk about how you started your fit and your body image program and teaching and speaking and all that. But you may realize it now, but not then, that people that come from trauma, myself included, I remember I was based on a true story, my fiction book that's coming out. I talk about the double life you start living. Academically, I was guy in school and all intended. And after I left school, I went to work. I was someone else. And on Friday nights and Thursday nights, even though I was in high school, I was someone else.
Right.
And my mom used to, it was funny because the first time I introduced it, my mom used to call it flipping the script. You got to be able to not get your ass kicked in the street and get a job. So make sure you can talk to everybody. But the chameleon is one of the most animalistic survival techniques, hands down, across the board, not just for humans, anybody. Right. But what you talked about just now, and I've experienced it on a couple different occasions. But you do fitness, so I know you've done. I think I've seen you do some of the boxing fitness or the fit boxing type thing. Or have you ever taken?
A little bit, yeah.
Right. Well, the knockout technique in boxing. People say, "Oh, I'm a knockout artist." You're not an artist. The body knocks a person out. When your neck goes to a certain extent, it's your brain's mechanism that stops you, because if you snap the neck, the brain knows you can die. Your
Right.
body is built to protect itself. Go to a certain level, the brain's like, let's shut it down. The
Interesting.
other time that happens, that we black out like that, is usually anger or trauma.
Right.
When you hear people say, I got so mad, everything got dark. Well, your brain gets to a point where it can handle a certain amount. If you're conscious and you're going through these things, and I know some of y'all are like, how you know this stuff? You can Google all this stuff, people. I'm not that smart. when you're going through what you went through, when you said, it got to the point where I was like, that's it. It's the same tool that people say. You ever hear people's story when they're talking to motivational stuff and they're talking about finances and starting a business. And I got to the point I said, you know what? That's it. That's it is you verbally saying something that your brain is like, okay. When people say enough is enough, I've had it. That's why we do our hands like I've had it up to here.
Right.
It's the brain's way of saying, okay, if we don't do something else, we're out of here. So.
But what's interesting with that, sorry to just for 1 second, because when I'm hearing with that is so interesting because there were two things. So that was so I had that same experience, but on both sides. So at first it was my brain saying, or whatever it was saying, you can't anymore because you're not going to survive the next below. So now you need to dissociate yourself, escape yourself for a little bit and become this other person, which was very dangerous and very unhealthy. And I did a lot of things I regret. And I'm honest to a fault in my book about it. I can't believe that I am about certain things, but I don't regret the dancing.
Stripper.
No, you know what? I did that time. I did it.
No. I'm telling them the title of the book so they can start searching.
This is the thing. It's not a stripping book. I didn't do that for a long time. I don't regret. Would I have done it if I wasn't kind of dissociated? No. But it was an interesting experience. Yes. And do I look down on it? No, never. I would never disrespect the sex industry at all.
I'll be honest. That might have been. The only thing I was trying to make out of all of that is that might have been the thing that saved your life.
Well, I don't know, because so there was that. Maybe had I stopped at that, but unfortunately.
Maybe if it was just that, it was like, oh, okay. What else did you do? Well,
then you got to read the book. That was the thing. Is I went off the rails. So I did do things. So I don't regret that. There are things I regret. I beat myself up over it for years. I had to stop doing that. That was making me very sick. And I had to forgive myself for that. That's why I dedicate my book to people who are struggling to forgive themselves for the mistakes they made when they were just trying to survive, because that's what I see now. That's what I was doing. So yeah, there were things I did that I wish I hadn't done. And that comes after the dancing. But the other part, when you're saying enough, it's funny because there's a chapter in my book where I talk that word exactly. It was the other end of it. It was coming out of that. I came out of it and I was doing better, but I still had those secrets haunting me. And what if people know about my dancing? What if people know about the bad stuff that I did and they tell my children and my children suffer from it? And it was killing me. And there was a time when I thought I shouldn't be here. I don't deserve to be here. My kids deserve better. And I remember thinking if I was walking across the street and there was a car coming towards me, I remember thinking I wouldn't jump in front of it, but I wouldn't jump out of its way either. I was tired. I was tired of feeling like I was always fighting my whole life, fighting through something, over something, for something. I was exhausted, but I also felt that I was a terrible person and I didn't deserve to be here. I didn't deserve to be taking up space and time and resources. And I would cry all the time. And then I had a day when I realized I'd had an exchange with a woman at the grocery store and I saw myself differently. And I came home and I cried my eyes out and said, enough. Like I said, enough. I looked at myself in the mirror, washing my face before having to go get my school. And I said, enough. Like you've punished yourself enough. This is not where your story ends. This is not it for you. And at that moment, that's when I decided to. So it was the same. It was the enough of the first time it was saying, that's what kind of led me into some dark times, was going, you can't handle this anymore. But I wasn't strong enough I've always been a rebel. And I wish that I had taken that fight that was always in me and said, I'm not going to go down the bad road. I'm going to take myself to the stronger, healthier path. I didn't have it in me then. it wasn't until later when I really thought I was done, when there was some spark still there that said, no, you're not done yet. And that's when I started to come back. And that was 4 years ago. And then it's been completely different since then.
Now, I need people to hear this, that at 46, 45, 44, 45, 46 years old, your oldest son, he's in college now, or?
Yeah, I don't want to get too specific, but yeah, he's
No, yeah.
Yeah.
So just letting people know that the course of life that happened, and like I said, when I heard about you, it was through Dr. Zoe Shaw, who had a show on LA Radio Now, and we're there. I'm engineering the show. We hear it. It's like, this woman is awesome. And I connect with her. Just the energy is great. This, that, and other. Of course, not knowing a lot about the body image stuff you touched on, and you touched on solutions, programs, all this stuff. It's phenomenal how much stuff that you've compacted into pouring out, unless you know that this is 30 years of experience, firsthand experience, and how I came out. So how did you start your program? Let people know the name of your program and how they can, because that's one thing that I know hands down. I mean, you still teach people, you still do probably Skype seminars with some folks if they hire you for time and stuff. So how did you come about?
So at this point, I was actually out of the scary time. I was healthy. I had gone into a recovery program for my eating disorder, saved my life. And I actually remember coming out of it and thinking, I'm never going to think about body image stuff again. I'm never going to think about eating stuff again. And then I remember realizing, if I'm going to move to a deserted island where there's no people, then I'm fine. But if I'm out in the world, it's impossible, because our society is obsessed with image and weight loss and all of it. And at this point, my kids were quite young, and they would come home from school and tell me what they were learning in school about health. And I found that it was all based around weight. It wasn't about, I felt it should be about gaining health, not losing weight. And it was really about calories and fat grams. And it was scaring kids. Like our body you should make good lifestyle changes because you like your body, not because you're afraid that you're not going to like your body if you're eating the wrong things or doing the wrong things. I didn't like the message, and I knew how much I had suffered. So I went to my kid's principal at the time and I said, okay, I don't like what they're teaching, and I think there needs to be more balance. I remember him saying, okay, come in on Friday and talk. And I'm like, what? Huh? What was that? So I put together, I took a big cardboard thing and I just put some pictures on it. And I went into school, spoke to 8th graders. I told my story, and I just talked about, I think I showed Photoshop things and just how we're kind of manipulated by the media. And they loved it. And I didn't plan. I didn't think of, I'm going to create this thing. It became where a teacher would tell another teacher, or a kid would tell their mom, and I just started speaking at schools. And I called the program Fit versus Fiction, because what does fit really mean? We confuse being physically fit. We confuse physical fitness with physical appearance. And we think that we know how physically fit someone is by how they look. And I'm a prime example of how wrong that is, because when I was dancing, I was also bodybuilding, and I was working with a trainer.
Well, thank you guys. This is part 2. For those of you who are getting into part 1, we had to jump to part 2 for some technical what have you. But we're talking to Marci Warhaft, her memoir, The Good Stripper, and she's part 1. If you haven't seen part 1 and somehow you're on part 2, go watch part 1, because phenomenal. Before it broke up and we had to jump out, Marci, you were talking about how you started Fit versus Fiction, and how since you were doing the fitness thing, you were bodybuilding, you were working with a trainer, you were dancing at the time, you were stripping, and if someone looked at you, they probably said, "Oh my goodness, look at her body." But that's why you started the whole concept of fit versus fiction, what people see versus what really fit is.
Right. And I would lie, people, well, I wouldn't. I mean, people say, oh, you're so dedicated. You go to the gym at 2:00 in the morning. That's not really dedicated. That's you need
obsessed.
And I wasn't eating solid food for a long time. I was afraid of solid food. I mean, it's not. My kids would say to me at one point, there was one day my kid said, "Are you eating today or just watching?" It was really, but physically, so yeah, I looked super fit and lean, but I wasn't healthy physically, but I wasn't healthy emotionally and psychologically. But when I got out of that, and it pained me to see kids who were learning that health was related to weight, and that's just such a tiny little part of it. You really can't tell how fit somebody is by how they look. There's so many other factors. And the thought of another kid going through what I went through, years of hating their body, it was so disheartening to me. The idea of watching other parents, the way my mother watched me, killing myself to look a certain way. So I didn't want kids to feel powerless. I didn't want parents to feel powerless. So I created Fit versus Fiction. I'd go into schools and I'd talk to parents and just a whole bunch of different venues to explain, empower, give tools. I talk about media manipulation so that kids felt that we can't keep the negative messages from coming in. You can't not let your kids look at a magazine or watch a TV show or socialize.
But there has to be some kind of balance.
So you have to just be ready for when the messages come in. They need to have that information to go, well, that's crazy. That doesn't make sense. So it's empowering. It's giving them more information. And so that was my goal for forever. That was my thing. And so I was very honest about my eating disorder issues at a time when I started Fit versus Fiction just when Facebook was starting. So it was a long time ago. So we didn't have these amazing groups that you can find online now talking about body empowerment and all that. And not a lot of people want to talk about eating disorders. It's not pretty. There's nothing glamorous about it, but I did, because I saw how horrible it is. And I think a lot of times when it comes to eating disorders, there's shame attached to it. And so what I learned and what I really wanted people to know was that I'm not a horrible person for having an eating disorder. I'm a strong person for even wanting to get over it. The eating disorder is a horrible thing. I'm not a horrible person because I battled it. And it's really important that people know that, and that recovery is out there. And I've had really, really strong recovery for a very long time that I'm super grateful for. But even that wasn't enough to help me get over the shame that I was living with during that time when I sort of dissociated.
Right. It makes sense.
So shame, that's the thing. Shame is so powerful. Shame and guilt and feeling like you're not worthy of self-respect, respect from other people, being healthy, being happy. It's such an anchor that's attached to you. So until we can let it go, then we can't really live the way that we're supposed to live.
And for anybody, we'll make sure you have all of Marci's information at the end of the interview, and plus below this in the YouTube and the IGTV, wherever you are, you have all the information. She does courses, classes. Now, is The Good Stripper your first book, actual book?
No. So I wrote the Body Image Survival Guide for Parents, and that I wrote the book. I wish my mom had. I was struggling. So that's something that you could pick up and put down, take with you to soccer while you're watching your kids play or whatever. And it's got whatever, all the questions that parents have asked me over the years. It's the question that they ask with a quick answer. Because sometimes you're doing something and your kid asks you a question, even if it's like, Mom, am I fat or something. I want quick answers that the parents don't feel like, oh my God, what am I supposed to say? It also has activities to play with kids from toddlers up until teens, games, activities, just stuff that empowers. It's not just like, here's the problem. It's okay, this is kind of where the problem's coming from, but okay, what can we do about it? How can I help? And so that's the body.
It's hard for me as a parent. My daughter's 8 years old, and with quarantine and everything, and I'm a single dad. Her mom has different ways of parenting than I do.
Right.
And not just that, but just the busyness of the schedule. Whereas I know if I don't at least get out and walk, and the way I love to cook and eat, if I don't at least get a couple miles, 4 miles in walking, it's a wrap.
Yeah.
So my daughter, and she's a little girl, and she's 8, and she's starting to get her body, and the funny thing is, I was like, well, what is all this? And just a day, spending a week with me, and she's walking and doing different things. I was like, hey, let her mom know. At least get out and get a walk.
Yeah.
Make sure she's not eating it's a balance. It's balance. And we forget how much as a child, how many activities that children had, coming up in the 70s and 80s. Outside was playtime. If you had to go inside, that was really punishment. Right. Now it's like the opposite. If your parents say, leave all that stuff alone and go outside and play.
Yeah.
They looking outside like, So let's come full circle. Let's because this is a big deal. And shout out to my partner Yonder. And we've been doing the books and publishing books and working with people and helping them get their books out for years. He was the one that told me, he said, Troy, once you write a book, you're eternal. Your legacy lives on beyond you. They can say whatever they want to say about you, but your book lives on. Your book lives on forever. So, say it.
Okay, I'm letting that. I'm digesting that. Yeah.
No, that's a big deal when you say, I'm going to write. Everybody says they want to write a book. Everybody starts. Some of those people, maybe a quarter of those people that say they want to write a book, may start writing something on paper. Maybe a quarter of those people may say, let me finish it.
Right.
There's probably the 1% that says, let me get it published.
Right.
And put it out. And some people have books published, they never promote it.
Right.
So all of what you're doing, that's huge. How do you get to the point of saying, I'm going to do a memoir, which is relatively a tell-all about me. So no matter what anybody else thinks, this is my autobiography.
Right.
I'm reading, shout out to Larry King. I'm reading one of my, I would never have known the power of memoir. I'm reading Larry King on Larry King. It's a book that came out in the 80s. So since Larry King has probably had 6 more wives and, but to read it as a Black kid from Baltimore, reading about this Jewish kid from the Bronx who has me by 40 years, I would never have known how much we had in common.
Wow.
How relative and how much I'm now more focused on my vision than ever. So what made you, how'd you get the gall, the feminine balls per se, to, to come up with this book?
Yeah, I tell you, it's funny because when you say that, I keep thinking like, it's one thing to write it, and it's one thing when people go, oh, I'm going to get your book. And then I realize, oh, wait, they're actually going to read it too. Hold on a second. Because for so many years, I had these secrets that I was so terrified were going to come out. And now here I just put it all on paper graphically, and I'm saying, here it is. But there's power in that. It's a bit terrifying. I know there'll be judgment, and I know I'm kind of ready for that. But here's the thing. So a few years ago, I left my marriage, and I remember a friend of mine. I moved into a house, and a friend of mine came over with stuff for my bathroom. It was like glittery things to hold. Not me at all. I'm not a sparkle person. And I said to her, thanks. It's so not me. And she goes, how do you know? Because you have no idea who you are. Because at that point, I had completely lost who I was. I remember a therapist telling me that I was like a puddle of nothing. I was a puddle of insecurities. Yeah, I had lost.
What are these doctors and therapists?
But it's true. Like that's how I was projected. Right. I was guilt. I was small. I was afraid of everything. My kids would look at me wrong and I'd cry. Like I was just weak. And it's just in those last few years that I've evolved and I've changed. I've had to learn. I really didn't know how to be an adult in the world. I really didn't. And I had to learn everything. And I went from feeling ashamed of how little I knew to feeling empowered by every step that I learned. I always say that it's almost like with everything I learned, my spine started going back vertebrae by vertebrae. And what had happened was I came to the point where I realized that I am flawed. I have made mistakes, but I was doing the best that I could. And there was, when I started to kind of I've fallen in love with the truth. I love the truth. I don't care how dirty it is. I don't care how, I love, whether the good, the bad, the really bad, I don't care. I prefer the truth to like a pretty lie. I don't like bravado. I don't like pretense. Give me your raw. Like, that's what I like. And that's how I live now. And I, for all the times that I did my body image stuff and I would say, don't worry about what people think, there was still judgment there from myself. I still felt like I needed to be a certain way. And I constantly felt like a failure because I wasn't being traditional in the way that I thought and felt and acted. And so I felt like I was failing. What I realized was I wasn't failing. I just wasn't being honest with myself. The minute I decided that I'm okay with how I am, and it's getting older, I mean, like I said, I'm 50 now. And it's like, if I can't be everything that I am, whoever I am now, what am I waiting for? I don't, it's not what I do. It's not who I'm with. It's me. I don't want to simmer down for anybody. I don't want to shrink for anybody. If my choices in life, as long as I'm not hurting anybody, if my life makes you uncomfortable, better you're uncomfortable with my life than I'm uncomfortable with my life. Yeah. You'll survive. I may not if I'm hiding who I am. And so just, I've cried enough tears that now when I want to laugh, I laugh. When I want to sing, I sing. And everybody knows when I want to dance, I dance. Either there's dancing down the street or it's on Facebook.
Hips, shoulders, ass, everything.
What's that?
Hips, shoulders, ass, eyes, hair.
Because it's just joy for me, and I'm going to do it. And, for every quote that you see on social media saying, just be you, society is still saying, not like that. And and I don't listen anymore. So when I have people messaging me saying, where's your energy from? And where's your positivity from? It's from me saying, this is me, whether you like it or not, this is me. And what I found is, it's true what they say, that the more authentic you are, there will be people who go, not for me, and they'll go away. But there will be other people who go, no, I get that. I feel that. I relate to that. And those are your people. The more you are, those are your people. And those are because anyone who will, if people read my book, and I think there's enough in there, whether it's relationship stuff, whether it's loss, whether it's the dancing stuff and sex stuff or other stuff that I have, there's something probably relatable to different people. Chances are there aren't going to be people who go, oh yeah, I've dealt with all of that, but there'll be aspects of it. I think people will maybe relate to the survivor part of me, the warrior part of me. Will there be people who will judge the other parts? Of course they will. But again, they're not my people. And that's okay. It's okay not to be for everybody. As long as you're true to yourself and the people that you love and the people who love you, that's all you can do. And so I think it's so liberating, whether people love you or hate you, if you're not hurting anyone else, being true to who you are. It just, if you're fighting to be who you think people want you to be, it's exhausting. And when you're just free to just be who you are, it's the easiest thing in the world. And so I hope that's what people take away from the book, is let the shame go. You can't be shamed for what you're not ashamed of. Somebody comes to me now and says, hey, I heard that you used to whatever. Yep. You can read about it on page 142.
Some of our greatest people, entertainers, leaders. I tell people all the time, if I hadn't seen other people's story, I would have lost hope a long time ago.
Right.
So with that said, Marci Warhaft, how can people get in touch with you? Because I'm just letting you know, you need both of our books. Some way, shape, or form, you need both of our books. But but how can people get in touch with you? And
so I'm on Facebook, Instagram, so just Marci Warhaft, really simple. Fitversusfiction.com. That's my body image website. So FITVSFICTION.com. My book is on Amazon. It's also, and it says that it's sold out, but it's not. Just order it. Where else? Well, those are the main ones, I think. Yeah.
And I'm sure you can DM, as long as it's good DMs, guys. But DM, reach out to her. She does sessions, classes. Now we're in the technology age. You may need just the coaching that she has.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say to your audience? You have a captive audience. Anything else you want to say to people before you get out of here? You have a whole 60 seconds.
Oh, geez. Oh, no, I think I said everything. Honestly, it's just, again, the minute you exhale the shame, you start inhaling your life, and the freedom in that is powerful.
Marci Warhaft, thank you so much for taking time out. I appreciate you. Story is amazing. I myself am loving the book that I have. You got to get yours. So, The Good Stripper, her memoir, Marci Warhaft, Fit versus Fiction, so much more. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.